Welcome to all of you on Tuesday. It is August 26th. Good to have you here. We will just get started. We're going to start off with really less of a question than an experience that somebody has sent in, and I encourage you to do this because we learn often from successful experiences as much as we do from questions. So this is an experience of a parent with a child. This parent says, I wanted to share an experience I had with Katie, my daughter. It was good learning for both of us. The power of real love is amazing. I had a teaching moment yesterday with my 8-year-old daughter, Katie, who got herself dressed for school without my help. When I saw what she was wearing, I first thought of making her change because she chose to wear a skirt to school. But then I thought about allowing her to learn through her own choices, and I remembered all the advice that I'd been given at group. Normally, I would never let her wear a skirt to school for reasons that she's going to explain here shortly. But I said, okay, if that's what you want to wear. So when I picked her up from school, she was sitting on the side with a member of the staff and another girl her age. The other girl had on a skirt, but with tight pants underneath the skirt. When I was a kid, I'd never seen this particular style, but lately I've noticed this with little girls and with occasionally women, a skirt and then pants or tights underneath the skirt. And I mentioned this to Donna, and she hadn't seen this style either, but apparently it's a thing. Katie's skirt was long past her knees, but it did not have pants or shorts underneath. Katie was mad at her friend because she had pulled down her skirt at some point during the day so that all the boys could see her underwear. This is a new phenomenon also apparently among girls. This is something that only boys used to do. Then Katie had apparently turned around and tried to do the same and pull her friend's skirt down to get her back, and they were both mad and in tears about it. It hadn't worked when Katie had done it, though, because, see, her friend had pants on. So my first instinct was to get frustrated with Katie because I didn't want her wearing the skirt in the first place because of my fears that something just like this would happen. I'll admit at first I did show disappointment and irritation by the tone in my voice. I told Katie that I didn't want to hear what the other girl did. I want to hear what you did and what you could do differently next time. I also told her that she can't control what other kids do, and that what happened was a consequence for wearing the skirt in the first place. In the moment, I felt I wasn't very loving because my own feelings of fear from my own past experiences crept in. I didn't want her to go through the same things that I had gone through as a kid, so I instantly felt like protecting her and showing anger to force her to listen to me. But I didn't. I calmed down and kept talking to her. I told her, when you're ready to talk about this, let me know. She kept complaining about the other girl, and I told her again, I don't want to hear about what the other girl did, just what you did and how you could have handled this differently or how you could handle it differently the next time. I also reminded Katie, you get to do what you did. That was your choice. But I asked her, how did that make you feel? Were you happy because of the choice you made? And then in parenthesis she says, now, what mother says it's okay to make a mistake? So she's talking to me. She says, Greg, this stuff really works. You'll see. Like I needed to be convinced. Then she continues on writing about the experience. She admitted it didn't feel good. And so she said to her daughter, I said, I'm not angry at you. I just care about your happiness, and you can give others your power, or you can take responsibility and make different choices next time. It's up to you. So she's teaching her daughter instead of trying to control her. Then she continues. Katie was also upset that the girl doesn't want to be her friend anymore. So I gave her suggestions on how to make it right by going to her friend and admitting what she did. But remembering that this girl always has the choice if she wants to be her friend or not. I told her, I believe that you'll figure it out on your own. I said, you can't make anybody like you or even love you. You just have to remember the other $2 million you already have. Because she'd already taught her daughter out of the Real Love and Parenting book. And the daughter said, oh yeah, I forgot about that. She said she thought that was very cute. Then out of the blue this morning, as we were hurrying out the door, I stopped when Katie said to me, Mom, I'm so glad that you're in real love. So the daughter apparently felt very loved and understood by the conversation they'd had the day before. She told me she feels loved by me more now than before. She also told me that she doesn't get as mad and it doesn't bother her as much when kids are mean to her. This came from a little girl you would never know was even listening to you and whines all the time. I think she actually thought about our conversation we had yesterday because I didn't bring it up. She did. So I thought, wow, maybe she's getting it and feeling loved by me, even if it's just a little bit. Even though I started by showing frustration yesterday in the conversation, I felt it ended really well. She even did her homework on her own last night after a little encouragement, but I let her start it, and she ended up doing it completely by herself. Now, the really cool part was I didn't try to rescue Katie, give her the sympathy she wanted, or take her side by getting angry at the other girl or the staff or try to protect her, and that is huge. I remembered that trying to control other people is never an option, so I had to help Katie see her responsibility in this. I reminded her that I love her no matter what choices she makes, because that is how she learns. I just want her to be happy. I'm grateful for Real Love in the last group session where we discussed a lot about parenting. Otherwise, I would have protected her too much, not taught her responsibility, and used power and control to get her to do what I want. What a lovely story. I don't need to add a thing. We love and teach our children, and the results are profound. And this is with an 8-year-old that this mother thought wasn't listening in family meetings. If we have family meetings regularly and we teach our children, we read to them, we show them the example of what real love looks like, and we will see results. And it's surprising the times that we do. We sometimes are tempted to think they're not listening, but they are getting this. And sometimes parents will say to me, well, but I've been trying it. Well, kid, then keep trying it. What have you got better to do? And the results can just be stunning. We may have some time, by the way, for some live questions. So if you have some, please send some to Donna. We may have time to do that. My partner buys lots and lots of clothes and toys for the kids. And then the house is a mess, and she wants me to help with the clutter, to clean things up, put it away, and that kind of thing. Put it away and then, in fact, bundle up the extra clothes and toys and help her then so that she can take the clothes and toys and all that stuff and not only put it away and store it and all that, but then take it out and sell it at garage sales and so on. The other day she took 200 items to a garage sale, but then she returned from the garage sale with 85 items. After that, I refused to help her with the clutter anymore. And she said that I was being conditionally loving by withdrawing my help with the clutter. But if I keep helping her with the problem, it just gets worse. Well, there are at least 3 issues going on here, not just one. In the first place, you probably are being conditionally loving. Here you said you would help with the clutter, but because she's not responding in the way you want, you're withdrawing your offer to help with the clutter. And so you're going to punish her. So you're saying, I'll help you, but if you don't do with my help what I want, then I'm going to withdraw my help. And so there's an element of punishing here, and she's probably right about that. But there's another issue that you're not talking about, and that's a problem that's really kind of, well, that's the other issue, is that you're not talking about this issue. So that's the second one. And it's a problem that's really kind of glaring at you, and that's one of buying a lot of things. And in this particular case, although that's not written here, I happen to know this couple, and that is that here are two little kids who are having a lot of stuff bought for them. So, here's an 8-year-old, for example, who has 10 pairs of jeans. And, I asked, why does a 8-year-old need 10 pairs of jeans? And the answer I got was, well, he needs different cuts of jeans, different styles of jeans for different affairs. And I'm going, you're kidding me. Can you imagine an 8-year-old walking around saying, I need a French cut for this day, and a broad cut for this day, and a long hip for this day, and things really can't have changed that much from the time when I was a kid. They couldn't have. For an 8-year-old, now, if you're a 35-year-old and going to work, I can see how you'd need a broader wardrobe, but I can't imagine an 8-year-old going to school and needing a wardrobe that included 10 pairs of just jeans, much less dress clothes. I could see where you'd need maybe 3 pairs of jeans, a pair to wear and a pair to throw on the floor and a pair to be in the wash. But when we buy a lot of stuff for our kids, the problems are much more far-reaching than we often anticipate. I mean, we have the clutter that you've talked about already. We have usually an addiction to shopping that nobody is addressing. People feel better when they experience the power of being able to buy things, which isn't being talked about. We have all the time that is spent shopping that could be spent doing other things. For example, the two of you spending time together as a couple, or spending time with those very kids whose clothes we're talking about. The time that is now required to earn the money to spend to buy the clothes, and a feeling that children get who have a closet full of clothes. If there's 10 jeans, imagine how many shirts, socks, dress pants, sport coats, and so on there are. A sense of entitlement that kids get. If an 8-year-old has that much, imagine what it's going to be like when he's 15 and is competing with all the other kids at school. People get to do with their money what they want. It's none of my business. None. I'm just describing a real potential problem that I see not just with this family, but with many families, where kids grow up saying, I have a right to own all of this stuff because my friends do. And of course, their friends believe they have a right to own it because their friends do too. So everybody's pointing a finger in a circle believing that they have a right to own it. And that's perpetuated naturally by the people who publish magazines and who produce television shows and movies, and everybody believes they have a right to own a lot. And then everybody has to work longer hours, and we all end up working harder so that we can own a lot, and nobody's happier as a result. Just something to think about. Here's somebody who says, I have a big-ass sign hanging around my neck that says, control me. And I hate being controlled. The last birthday that mattered to me was the 18th, when I was finally free. Yes, my mother is a control freak, and so is my wife, and so is my boss. Even in my real love groups, people who have a tendency to control others, when they're not at their loving best, will sometimes tell me how to feel or what to do. Unasked, out of the blue, people tell me what to do. Recently, I sat next to a lady at a spiritual lecture, and she would lean over and tell me what to do. Gee, lady, I don't even know you. This is insane. What am I doing to attract all this to me? Help, he says. Well, I can tell you that people rarely tell me what to do. And so, if people rarely tell me what to do, and everybody is telling you what to do, there's a clue. Now, it is a fact that we all have a tendency to use power as a form of imitation love. That's true. So we all do have a tendency to tell other people what to do. So that's a fact. So we're out looking for people to control. Now, how do they find you? There's something about the way you hold yourself. There's something about the way you smile. There's something about the way you speak. We are all incredibly adept. We have a sensitivity to other people's mannerisms, their facial expressions, their tone of voice, their body posture, everything that tells us what forms of imitation love they trade in. That's how we find the people we fall in love with. That's how we find the people who are most likely to be our friends. Because we're looking for the people that trade in the forms of imitation love that we are most comfortable with. And we can see these signs for miles. There's something about the way you smile and hold yourself that says, I'm eager to please you. I will do whatever you want. And you're completely unaware of these things. Now, it would require a complete change in who you are to just suddenly change all those things. I'm not telling you to do that, but the bottom line is, the reason people reach out and control you is because you allow it. You can't just suddenly change the way you smile and hold your body, but you can learn to say no. You can break the cycle. See, people see those signs in you. They can almost, it's like a smell almost. Yep, there's somebody I can control. And so they will lean over and say, here's what you should do. All you have to do is say, thanks, I've got this under control. I appreciate your advice, but I'm going to go ahead and do it the way I'm doing it. You can be very polite. You don't have to say, up yours. You don't have to tell them to go to hell. You don't have to be unkind. But when somebody says, well, don't you think you should? Because that's what people usually say as a form of control. Don't you think you should? That's one of the most common beginnings to the way to control of when somebody's about to control you, and you say, no, I really don't. Whereas you actually think about it. See, what they're doing is saying, it's like their introduction to you, are you somebody I can control? That's their way of asking. When they ask you, you actually go, well, you actually consider the question. When somebody says to me, don't you think you should? I look at them like, I just look at them strangely like, I'm sorry, at my age, did you think that I hadn't already considered what I would like to do? Or when somebody says to me, why do you, this is another question they ask people when they're trying to figure out if there's somebody to control. And you don't have to be irritated at all when you answer. When you're doing something, if they're looking for somebody to control, they say, why do you do that? Or why did you do that? Well, see, as somebody who's controllable, you actually answer their question. You tell them why you did it. Foolish on your part. Because as soon as you tell somebody why you did it, what you're doing is loading up a bullet, packing it with gunpowder, putting on the tip, handing it to them. They put it in their gun and shoot you with it. Because the reason you give them is never good enough. And then they will convince you why you should do it their way. Is this beginning to sound familiar? And many of you, this should sound familiar too. That's why people ask you. When somebody says to you, why did you do it that way? They're not asking you a question. What they're really saying is, I want you to do it my way. And I want you to justify why you didn't. So any reason you give them won't be good enough. So don't answer their question. When somebody asks me, why did you do it that way? I say, because I wanted to. Now, if they're genuinely asking, you can tell. When controllers ask, you can tell that they're just asking to control you. If somebody really wants to know why I did it that way because they want to learn why I did it, I'm glad to answer. But you can immediately tell the difference. You really can, from 100 miles. If you've been controlled all your life, don't answer that question. You say, because I chose to, because I preferred to, and you're done. You're controlled because you allow it. So my answer to you is, or my suggestion is, and I'm not trying to control you. It's just a suggestion. But if you don't want to be controlled, quit allowing it. All you have to do is not participate, and it will stop. Really. No kidding. Here's somebody who writes, I'm starting to get what you mean about never being right. I can't drive right now. I can't drive a car. Let's see. My wife waited for 5 minutes. Oh yeah, I was at the gym, and my wife waited for 5 minutes before I came out. In other words, I was supposed to come out at a certain time, and I came out 5 minutes late. And she was annoyed. I was on time, or I thought I was, but it turns out that the gym clock was slow by 5 minutes. I started to defend myself, but the reaction was very different from what I wanted. It was like putting out a fire with gasoline, because what I finally understood was what mattered was not defending myself and explaining that I was right. What mattered was paying attention to her and what she was saying. So I stopped defending myself and said, you're right. I'm sorry that you had to wait for me for 5 minutes. And it was over. So, you want to be happy or you want to be right? Pick one. Here was somebody who, I don't remember where this came from. I think it must have come over the phone because it's just a brief note to me. It was a question from somebody who said that their wife has a really hard time believing. He was having a discussion with his wife, and he was saying that he believed, it's something I must have said at a seminar, that it's my belief that on the whole, people are really doing their best at any given time. In other words, when they make mistakes, people make mistakes because they're just empty and afraid, and they're just reacting to their emptiness and fear. And that I believe that people in their emptiness and fear are just drowning, and they're not pretending to drown. That people are really doing their best to keep their head above water. They're not faking it. And he was explaining this to his wife, and his wife's going, no, I don't think so. I think people sometimes intentionally are unloving. And what I was suggesting is that the only reason that I can see that people have such a hard time believing that people are doing their best is that then they have to give up their victimhood. People they have to give up their blaming. Most of us are victims. Well, like 99% of us are victims, really. You can't even be angry without being a victim. All the getting and protecting behaviors are founded on victimhood. And if we've been blaming other people for how we feel, if, for example, we're angry, and we've been angry all of our lives at other people for how they treated us, and suddenly we hear that other people are doing their best, if I really believe that other people are doing their best, I would have to give up my anger instantly. If I really believe other people are, how could you possibly be angry at somebody who's doing the best they can? Huh? How could you? It'd be like being mad at a retarded person because they can't solve a math person. It'd be like being angry at somebody with cerebral palsy because they can't run faster. Mad at a drowning person because they can't get out of the water. if we accept that other people are doing their best, we have to completely give up our victimhood and our anger, because we can't blame people anymore. And that's why she's having a hard time believing that. She'd have to give up her anger. And that's a pretty hard thing to give up, because then we have to be completely responsible for our own behavior. And most of us don't want to take complete responsibility for our behavior. We really, really want to blame everybody else for how we feel. It's just really thoroughly ingrained in us to blame everybody else. Here's somebody who says, I've read your book on real love and marriage, and I feel that in the last 4 months I've grown so much that it's actually been painful in a way, if that makes sense. Yeah, it makes lots of sense. Change is painful. Anytime we have to grow outside of what we've always done, that requires changing the patterns of a lifetime, and that's very often painful. Stretching, moving, it hurts. She continues, I had a 3-year relationship that ended 4 months ago. So picture this. She'd been in a relationship for 3 years and it ended 4 months ago, not a marriage. And in my search for answers, I happened to stumble upon the book. I understand the ideas and concepts of everything you speak about, yet sometimes it's so hard for me to tap into the road to happiness as I become selfish and torn in my own emotions. Sure, we have to overcome the inertia of decades as we change. At times, she says, I feel lost and vulnerable, and then there are times that I feel angry. Now, this is useful information. Lost and vulnerable is great. It's like an indication of a willingness to learn. Whereas when you're angry, you're showing an indication that you're protecting yourself. And that's, again, just useful information, but those are the moments when you're not indicating a willingness to learn. Continuing, I was dating a man for 3 years. From the beginning, it was a slow-moving kind of relationship. We were hesitant and filled with a lot of fear. For the first year, we were just dating, nothing serious, just letting time go by, seeing where it would go. He has an 8-year-old child and is divorced. I was scared of getting hurt in a relationship, and I had never fallen in love with someone. So you'd never fallen in love, he'd been divorced. As things became more serious, there was a big wall that wouldn't come down. I began to let mine down, but he didn't. I always knew he was unhappy, and he would always say to me that he felt guilty that his daughter would grow up without a nuclear family. He felt like a failure since he'd been divorced. He felt that although being married to his ex was for the wrong reasons, he would never be able to provide what he was given as a child, I guess a nuclear family. My argument was always, instead of one family, she'd have 2. Not only would she have the one you build, but the one that her mom builds as well. Anyway, he's also an owner of a dance studio, and he works like 24/7. It's a family-owned business, so he says he always stresses as he wants to be the perfect son, perfect father, perfect boss, perfect boyfriend. Now, wanting to be perfect sounds like a good thing to some people, but it's almost always an unhealthy sign, because people who are taught from childhood or who have come to believe that they have to be perfect in order... What they're saying is that they believe they have to be perfect in order to be deserving of the love of the people around them. And usually they were taught that from the time they were children. Competence is great, but feeling like you have to be perfect will drive you crazy. And usually these people usually impose that belief on the people around them also. Continuing, I've come to realize that during the relationship I became very selfish, demanding, controlling, with an enormous amount of expectations. I feel I drove him away. After 4 months ago, when it all started, I'd confronted him about us being together. I didn't want to be married right now, but I questioned where we were headed, and he couldn't answer. He said he wasn't ready for a commitment as he had too many things happening in his life. So my question was always, how can you not know whether you want to be with someone after 3 years? If he hasn't figured out whether he wants to be with you after 3 years, that's a pretty good indication that he doesn't he doesn't know what a stable relationship is. After 3 years with someone and he still hasn't figured out whether he wants to be with you, to stay in a relationship that unstable and that uncertain, I've seen that work out almost never. And that's a pretty good indication to you that it's probably time to leave. Your desire to ask where the relationship was going is fine. You feel like you pushed him. At some point you have to ask. And here's a man paralyzed with fear by a previous divorce, paralyzed by a desire for perfection, terrified he'll make a mistake with his daughter, terrified he'll make a mistake in business, terrified he'll make a mistake with you and a future marriage. This man is telling you with all of his fears that he's not ready for any kind of relationship, not just with you. I suggest you listen to his fears. This guy's paralyzed by fear. And do you really want to be in a relationship with somebody who is this paralyzed with fear? These are very alarming signs. His answer was always, it's not you. I know I want to be with you. I know I want the same things you want, but I'm scared of another divorce. Well, sort of. He's not just scared of another divorce. He's scared, period, of failing in everything. That's what he's telling you, and that's what you're saying here. He felt he wasn't financially ready. His work needs him all the time. And in the midst of all this, his ex-wife asked him to take full custody of his daughter. He said to me, I haven't been happy in a very long time, and it's not fair to you that I bring you down with me. Well, frankly, he's right, and I suggest you listen to him. I haven't been happy in a very long time. I'm going down. Don't go with me. Well, I think I'd listen to somebody who says, my ship is sinking. Don't get on it. I'd listen. I need to find my own happiness, and I feel I can't do it anymore. That's what he's saying. He said he felt like he just wanted to crawl up in a hole. Now he sounds like he's depressed. This really sounds like depression at this point. He also said, so many people expect so much of me that it was just driving him insane. He said he wants to love me the way I deserve to be loved and have a relationship, but too many factors are demanded of him, and so he feels like he can't give me what I need. Well, he's not lying. And again, I suggest you listen. It may be that he can be reached. It may be that he can be treated for depression, but that's something he'd have to get done. And to be pining about being in a relationship without him, A, getting treated for depression, and B, learning an enormous amount about real love, and that's apart from you being in a relationship with him, would be really kind of crazy on your part. He'd have to learn to do all of this before you'd even consider being in a relationship with him. I miss him. After I read your book, I thought much of everything we said to each other. I was so angry at him. I felt, how could he waste my time? Why did he do this to me? If he knows I'm in pain without him and he's in pain without me, why do this to us? He didn't do anything to you, sweetie. He's just in pain. He offered you a lot of imitation love in the beginning. Like you said, you got along pretty well in the beginning for a while. A lot of fun, pleasure, power, time. You had maybe great sex in the beginning. I don't know. You didn't say. I'm not assuming you did, but it made you feel really great. Well, who can't get along dating and having fun in the beginning? Although I guess some people can't even do that. But he's made it very clear that he doesn't have the unconditional love to offer you, and you've made it very clear you don't either, because you describe being very angry and demanding and clinging and annoyed with him. So neither one of you has what it takes to make a relationship. Neither of you do. So if you push him to have a relationship with you at this point, you'll be very sorry. Then you continue. Stuff like we worked so well, we respected each other, we barely fought, we shared a lot of common values, and I thought we wanted the same things. And so I ask myself all the time, do I want him to be happy? My answer is yes. So you're trying to rationalize why you want a relationship, but all of these things, these are not enough. We shared a lot of common values, big deal. We had a lot of things in common. It doesn't matter spit if people share common politics, common values, the same church. We both like to canoe and hike together. So what? You like all those things, but you don't know the first thing about unconditional love. what does it matter if you like to canoe together if you hate each other? People who get married almost invariably share a lot of these common things. And yet look at the state of marriage in this country. It's horrifying. So it's real love is not just a thing, it's the thing. It's not enough. So you had great laughs in the beginning, but he's realized that all that imitation love's not enough. See, he's already been in a marriage. He's already experienced the great high of imitation love. You said you've never even fallen in love. So he's saying, I realize it's a complete failure. You've just gotten off the high of falling in love, and you're going, but I think we can make it work. And he's going, it doesn't. I can tell you, it doesn't. And it doesn't. This is not real love that you two have experienced. Now, could it change? Well, maybe. But what you've experienced so far is nothing like the unconditional commitment made to a lifetime of learning to slog through the mud together and unconditionally supporting each other. Then you continue. After a month, I called him. I apologized for all the things I'd done wrong. He said he'd realized that he's miserable without me. Of course, see, he's miserable with you. Like he says, he's been miserable and trying to be perfect, and that's one of the reasons, remember, that he called it off. He realized that I'm the love of his life. Then it says here that he says he's going away to a retreat in Arizona, possibly to treat depression. So the impression of depression is apparently true. So maybe so. So maybe that if this guy gets treated for depression, maybe after he gets treated for depression, and I mean seriously treated, where he's a lot different, and he comes back, and although at one point here you say that you introduced to him the possibility of studying real love, and he turned down the possibility. If he comes back and he says, well, I'm not really interested in studying real love, why would you want to continue a relationship with somebody who doesn't have the time to study the one principle that you've found here that has made a difference in your life? If you've got somebody in your life who is really meaningful to you, and he says you're meaningful to him, and you said to him, I want you to read a book on the mating habits of the insects in Borneo, it wouldn't matter what the subject was. If he says you're really sufficiently important, he'd read the book. Wouldn't matter what the subject was. Architecture, ancient Greece. If you say to him, this book's important to me, he'd read it. Now this is supposing he's not seriously clinically depressed. But if he says, I don't have time for reading, well, then go away. You don't want a relationship with this guy. Anybody who says that you're important would read a book. At least begin to and talk to you about it. So he gets treated for depression. You start studying the principles of real love together. And then, if he shows that he's able to consistently tell the truth about himself and shows the ability to begin to be truthful and begin to be unconditionally loving, not just fun and entertaining. That isn't even close to enough. Fun and entertaining is nothing. So what? Get a dog for fun and entertaining. Get a dog and rent a DVD and a glass of wine if you want fun and entertaining. Really. But if he can do those other things, he can be consistently honest and move toward unconditionally loving, then maybe you've got a relationship. But don't keep doing what you're doing now, which really is grieving over a fantasy. Because you're not really even grieving over anything real you had. You're grieving over a fantasy over what might have been. He's really seriously troubled. And then, if this doesn't work out, continue to learn about real love and, prepare yourself for an unconditionally loving relationship. But don't settle for anything less, or you'll be very, very unhappy. Learn more about real love. Find people who can unconditionally love you on the website and the teleconference calls, but don't settle for anything less, or you'll be guaranteed for a great deal more unhappiness than you've experienced already. Here's somebody who says, I'm struggling with a husband who is drowning. However, what I'm struggling with the most is that I feel that he's drowning to me. I know that he's also drowning to everybody else, and that I'm just the closest one to him, and that's why I'm getting splashed. How can I work through what I'm feeling? Well, you can start off with even the supposition that he's drowning to you is so arrogant there are hardly even any words for it. I mean, just stick with the metaphor. If you really get that your husband is drowning, that he's having trouble maintaining his emotional survival, then you would be filled immediately with compassion. He's drowning. How could we ever possibly be irritated with somebody who's drowning? If we ever got that metaphor, that'd be the end of anger in our lives. And you're just the closest one to you. He doesn't intentionally do this to you. Now, another thing that will help you. I get that it's inconvenient to be around a drowning person because they splash you. So let's stick with the metaphor. Or you can do it with the metaphor, or you can do it emotionally. Take your pick. There's only two ways to go with a drowning person. You can run far, far away from them, and then you won't get splashed, but then they die. There's only one other way to make the splashing stop. Only one. Pull them out of the water. There isn't another way. You can stand close to them and whine, complain, yell at them, wish it were different, say incantations, but if you want it to stop, help them. You can tell them how they should be doing something different. You can yell swimming strokes at them, but if you really want it to stop, help them out of the water. And the same is true in a relationship. I mean, I was working with a couple just recently, and she was just so mad at him about some behaviors somewhat similar to what you're describing here. And I said, your husband is drowning. And she said, I'm so mad at him for, I know. And how many years have you been mad at him? And she said, pretty much the length of their marriage. And I said, and she kept telling me all the reasons that she was justified in being mad at him. And I said, I understand every one of them. I get it. And I said, and love is the only thing that will help him. But if I love him, he'll just keep doing this. She was telling me that if she loves him, that somehow he'll feel justified and will keep doing it. I said, no, he won't. Well, but it's not fair, but he needs to understand that what he's doing is wrong, and really she wanted me to haul him out of the water and make him bleed. Actually, she wanted me to leave him in the water and make him bleed so the sharks would come and eat him. So it really comes down to it's as simple as this. In all the years that you've been mad at him, has what you're doing ever worked? It's pretty simple. Yes or no? Well, but in all the years that you've been angry at him and tried to control him and told him to stop drowning and yelled at him and cursed at him and told him to stop and told him he should behave differently, and in all those years, has it ever helped? No. Never. None of all the variations of your being irritated have ever helped. He's really drowning because he doesn't feel loved. And do you see any likely prospects on the horizon or in close proximity, any likely prospects of anybody who's going to come to his rescue and love him? You see anybody close by? No. Well, then who's left? Me. There we go. That's the only reason I'm suggesting that you love him. Because you're it. You're the closest one and you're getting splashed, and I get it. And I don't care whether it's fair or not. It's just the only likely solution. So let's give it a shot. And in the couples who have been willing to do this, it's powerfully effective. So rather than experiment with every other solution which doesn't work, why not try love? Why not just try it? Why not set yourself an experiment of 2 weeks of diving in all the way and loving him no matter what he does, and seeing him as drowning and saying, I'm going to love and support him no matter what, instead of overwhelming his world with the word but and you should. Why not? What do you got to lose? And then let me know the results. And I'm not picking on you. I understand all the reasons for your struggling, like it says here. I get it. I get it. I understand every excuse and every rationalization, and none of them work. That's all. They're just ineffective. Here's somebody who says, I've had some health issues lately that have made me physically very tired. I'm a single mom of 3 young boys, and I'm trying very hard to use my energy to learn and incorporate the Real Love principles. I'm also in the student coaching program and love what I'm learning. And I'm associated in helping others learn real love. All I want to do in life is give, give, give. My beef is that when I physically feel so tired that I cannot give to others like I would like, and some days all the energy I have goes to my boys. I guess the real beef I have with myself is I want to be the giver and not the receiver. Yes, I've had a huge eye-opener this week, and I'm prideful and arrogant, and I cannot ask for help. My church leader pointed out to me that I need to ask my family for help. It makes my stomach physically sick to ask for help. I know it comes from being the oldest of 10 and always being the giver. Maybe. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm trying to be more grateful for what love and help others do give me, but I'm still caught up in the fact that I need help right now. I feel like a real failure in life to ask for help or to admit to others that I don't have a lot to give right now. I also feel guilty when I don't have enough to return all the real love calls I get in a timely manner, and I feel like I'm letting others down to not be there for them when they need me. Do you have any suggestions? I know my health will improve as I learn what I need to learn from this, and there you go. Well, you know, there's a lot of things to learn from this. I mean, it's a little, you're going to have the opportunity to give all your life, and it's a little arrogant, like you said, a little hypocritical, really, to give to other people and expect them to graciously receive what you give when you can't graciously receive. You know, like it's a lot hypocritical. And I've been there. I've done that. And what I suggest to you is that probably the biggest reason you're having a hard time asking for help isn't so much that you were the oldest of 10. That's an interesting therapist's answer, more of an analytical one, but is more that you've learned that when you when you receive, that you've learned from people that when they give to you, there's always a hook attached. And that you've seen so little unconditional giving in your life. And I've seen the same experience in my own, that when people give you something, they're really not giving. They're investing with you, or they're trading with you. And so people give you something, but it's really not. It's almost like casting when you're fishing. Out comes the hook. And so they give you something, but there's a hook attached to it. And if you take it, later on, or even right then, you're going to hear about it. And later on, you're going to hear, do you remember when I did this for you? Or you're going to hear later on that you weren't sufficiently grateful for what you were given. Or you're going to hear, if only you had been sufficiently prepared, then you wouldn't have needed the help in the first place. Or if only you had been sufficiently good or righteous, you wouldn't have gotten to the place where you'd had to ask for help. Oh my goodness, the list goes on and on. Asking for help is fraught with danger because of all these things. And so you've learned that it's a pretty scary thing to ask for help. I've seen this over and over. Many people, for example, are frightened to be sick because when they were children and they got sick, they were told that it wasn't okay to be sick. They were made fun of when they were sick. They were told that nobody believed them when they were sick. They were made to go to school anyway when they were sick. They were laughed at. They were ridiculed. It's not okay to be weak. So any one or three or four of those reasons would keep you from asking for help. And you don't necessarily have to ask the most sticky people, in other words, the people who would glom onto you and have the worst hooks for help. You could experiment with the people that you think would have the least attachments for help. Try some of the people in the Real Love group to ask for a little help here and a little help there. And if you run out of sources of help there, sometimes you end up having to ask people that you already know are going to have hooks. And you just have to accept the whole thing. You have to accept the whole package. Attachments, hooks, obligation, need for gratitude and all. When we get in bad enough straits, sometimes you just have to take the whole deal. It's kind of like when you need money bad enough, and in the short term, you have to take the money along with the high interest rate. And as long as you understand that that's the situation that you're going into, it doesn't taste quite as bad when you expect it and you understand it right off. But I get it. Do you have any? Here's one. I've taught my 7-year-old son to be a perfectionist, as I am. I think we talked a little bit about that actually earlier. As soon as he makes a mistake on his homework, he begins to whine and immediately gives up on whatever he's doing because it's never going to be good enough. My fault. How can I love and teach my son and other children that mistakes are okay, yet not settle for doing mediocre work? Homework, chores, etc., or to simply quit. Good. So when you're doing a thing together and you make a mistake, it's going to take you a while to change this pattern with the kid. But when a mistake is made, he's going to only learn to change this attitude as he sees your attitude toward a mistake. So you make a mistake in a thing, he's going to need to see you laugh about the mistake and not care. So be it whatever, you're coloring and you intentionally draw outside the lines and you leave it there. I mean, I used to do this kind of thing with my kids. Draw outside the lines, leave it there. You're outside working, you rake up the leaves, and you leave some of them there. See, he's learned the perfectionist trait from you. You play checkers with him or a card game, and you lose and you laugh. You have to show them what it's like to do this. My daughter asked me this question about with her son, who was a little bit tight about playing games. And so she would go outside and she would play and miss a shot playing basketball and lose and laugh. She'd miss a shot and lose and laugh. And she went out one day and her little son was outside playing basketball and throwing the ball up in the air and not even trying to make baskets. And his little friends and he were just throwing the ball up in the air, and he'd throw the ball up, and the more he missed, the more he'd laugh. They were just having a hoot of a time. She taught him that the score just didn't matter. And I went with him to a football game recently where he played, and it just utterly delighted me to watch him play in a football game. And in the game, he scored, I think, a couple of touchdowns. Did a couple of other things in the football game that would be remarkable according to some people, at least as far as accomplishments. And I asked him what he most enjoyed about the game. The answer just thrilled me to death. What he told me was what he enjoyed most about the game, get this, before the game started, he had thrown the football up in the air by himself before the game, and he'd thrown it up in the air and caught it 20 times in a row. He didn't even really remember or care that he'd scored 2 touchdowns. And then he described pulling somebody's flag during the game and falling on the ground and rolling over 2 or 3 times. What he described was the things that were the most fun to him. It didn't matter to him at all that he'd scored or done something perfectly, or we have to show them by example. So that's how you're going to teach him. And you're not going to unlearn this habit of his overnight. In fact, if you insist that he get over his perfectionism overnight, that's going to be more perfectionism. See? So it's like lighten up. So if he starts to fuss, you come along and you say, I don't care. I don't care. Let's make another mistake. If he makes a mistake on his paper, Xerox his homework 2 or 3 times. If he makes a mistake on his paper, be prepared for this, I would suggest even. This is just kind of a technique-y thing. Xerox his homework 3 or 4 times so you're prepared for this. And when he makes a little mistake and starts to whine, come over with a crayon and write all over his homework so that he sees what a mistake really looks like. Or with a magic marker and just screw the heck out of his paper and laugh. And then when he looks at you in horror, then you can pull out his homework that you've mimeographed so that you've got one where you can start over. So that he gets that mistakes are nothing. Our kids have got to see that they just don't matter. That being joyful and happy is the thing. So, speaking of fun, it's been fun being with you. And we'll see you next Tuesday, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And send me your questions again to greg@reallove.com. And in the meantime, we love you tons. See you next Tuesday. Bye.